Actually, we are from different countries, but we were born in Moldova. And we are from different fields of activity. And the average age is approximately 30 years. So the members of our club decide to choose the book to read. Afterwards, we read the book and we discuss the book. And if the writer is still on this planet, we invite him to join us in order to getting to know him, to have a friendly conversation with questions and answers from both sides. So I invited also two friends from Belgium. They actually make teams from different companies to getting things done. So they as well joined us. First of all, I would like just to ask one thing. I Googled that you visited Moldova in 2017.
I did.
Yeah, and actually we have a participant who participated at that training.
Did it hurt?
Well, we'll give the floor, but he's excited as well. What is your impression about Moldova?
It was beautiful what I saw, and had great coffee. I met the guy who owns the major coffee shop there, and he's a fan, and that was fun to hang out and meet some people.
Okay.
Interesting that several years ago, and she's still a good friend, Ludmila from Moldova, and her husband Kirill, they actually worked for our staff. She won the green card lottery, and so she was able to get to the States and work with us. And so that's kind of all I know. I didn't get a chance to see very much of the country, but it was lovely to, as we say, put a face to the name and put a face to the country name, that I'd never been before. So it was lovely. Nice to make it a known quantity. Maybe I'll be back.
Yeah, that would be great if you could come back, and also to try our wine because it's quite good.
Oh, I did that. Believe me, I do that wherever I go. So yes, indeed.
Great. David, before we start, let me ask you, what is the most annoying question you receive in such discussions, workshops?
The most which question?
Annoying question.
I don't get annoying questions, actually. I have to think about that. Annoying question would be, well, most people who are just introduced to GTD have a lot of questions that I understand. Gee, this looks complicated. This looks like a lot of stuff to do. Can't I just keep stuff in my head? What's the best tool to use? I mean, there are about 22 questions that show up. And none of them are annoying. They're all understandable why people would have those questions or concerns.
Well, good to know that, David. So we're going to ask you many questions, different types of questions. So I'm happy to hear that you're open. Just one question before we give the floor to our members. How did the book come out?
Well, the first edition was published in 2001. This is now its 20th anniversary. Actually, it was published in January of 2001.
Wow.
So, and I just turned 75 last week. So my book was first published when I was 55 years old. So any of you who are concerned about, what you're going to do after midlife, don't worry. Lots of possibilities and options. There certainly were for me. Though the book was really written as a manual to describe all the best practices that I had discovered or uncovered over 30 years of doing this work one-on-one with people in all kinds of companies, and also doing training for hundreds of thousands of people, mostly in the US by that time, so some international. And so that was I had no idea whether the book was going to be popular or not. I just needed to get it out of my head. And, as I say, it took me 25 years to figure out what I'd figured out, and that it was unique, that nobody else had done it, and that it was bulletproof. You couldn't punch a hole in it. It was implemented and it went viral inside of some of the companies that would spit you out in about 2 seconds if you couldn't stand toe to toe with some of the busiest and brightest, best people on the planet. And when my stuff went viral inside of those environments with those kind of people, I said, okay, kind of gave me the confidence that I could go ahead and put it in a manual and put it out there. But I had no idea. You know, I've run my life pretty much with high anticipation and no expectation because I hate being disappointed. So I had no idea. So it was fascinating to me that it became as popular as it did, and then over time became such an international bestseller. And that sort of opened the door to, is it possible to scale this education and to get it to a lot more people around the world that seem to be interested in getting it? So that's a short version of a very long story. So,
Well, the reviews say that GDT changed many lives around the world. So
yeah, well, I was graced to have uncovered a profession and a career that does nothing but help people. You know, there's nothing about GTD hurts. You don't even have to implement the whole thing. Any part of it will improve your life. Just the 2-minute rule will add value to your life.
yeah.
Just deciding a next action, you know, when something shows up instead of when it blows up, will change your life.
Yeah.
You know, just having some sort of a trusted system to keep lists in that you look at regularly to sort of point you to what you need to be doing and what's okay to not be doing. That'll change your life. So again, it's not like some new science or some new technology or some foreign language to try to learn. All these behaviors you all already do already. You all know how to write stuff down. You all know how to make next action decisions. You all know how to keep lists. You all know how to look at a calendar or look at a list and say, okay, here's where I need to be or what I need to do right now. So, you know, I didn't really make anything up. I just recognized what it is that we do that allows us to get on top of the world and to have more clear space in your head to focus on the most meaningful things. So, wow, how great that I was able to figure out a way to make a living with that and you know, teach it and coach it.
Yeah. Well, at least it makes you to think. That's the most important thing of GDT. You start.
Well, I'm so sorry, guys. Thinking is required. It is hard work. No software is going to tell you what you should buy for your mom's birthday. It may give you some options, you know, and if you can, you know, you can use, you know, software to remind you of all the things you have ever bought for your mom and all the things she might like and what her favorite colors are or any of that. So software can give you decision support, but it can't make those decisions. So deciding a next action, the software will not make that decision. You have to. The software doesn't even actually make the decision about what's the outcome you need to keep track of until it's finished. You have to do that. So action and outcome thinking is actually an installed thought process. Mm-hmm. So people over the years, you know, organizations have asked us, what's the final sort of result of an organization implementing this methodology? And we basically say it's an installed thought process. You won't start meetings without going, what are we trying to do by what time? You won't end discussions without going, excuse me, what did we just decide? And what's the next step and who's got it? It's just good business. It's not a cult.
Yeah.
You know, well, you can call it a cult if you want. I mean, well, why not? You know, I'm not making as much money as cult leaders make. So, you know, let's call it a cult and send me more money, maybe.
It's a good idea.
No, please don't.
Yeah, thank you, David. So we have a number of questions today, and I will just ask participants to raise their hands and or write their questions in the chat. We will start with the number one question, which is Natalie, the founder of the club. Natalie, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Sounds very official. David, once again, thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to just say one thing. It was very interesting to me when I found out that one of the people who joined us today participated at your training 2 years ago in Chisinau, or 3 years ago in Chisinau. And when we asked him, how was it? Exactly what he says was, he changed my life. So I got even more excited, and it goes actually very in line with what you were saying, that it changed not only your life, or like not only the life of many other people, but also your life. Another thing what I wanted to say is happy birthday to you and to the book. I had no idea that we are actually around such a beautiful anniversary. I didn't pay attention to it, but it's very nice to know that we are kind of celebrating it as well. What I wanted to ask you about is going through the book. I kept stumbling into things that reminded me again and again of some of kind of rules that I'm learning still through some coaching classes. I'm not a coach myself, but I'm doing coaching with somebody in different, let's say, schools or even individually. And I couldn't help myself but notice how many similarities there are in between GTD method and the so-called mindfulness. One of the things is being present. Like mindfulness, spiritual people will always say, be present. That's why we do meditation, because we want to be present. And that's exactly what you are saying. You have to be engaged. If you are doing one thing, you have to be fully dedicated to that one thing. Even the journaling stuff, which journaling is in more like in the spiritual mindfulness part. And you are saying, write the freaking thing down, get it out of your brain, let the brain do its own thing, because it's not created for memorizing, for stocking ideas, which for me was a bit of a not life changing, but it was like a wow moment. I actually realized, wow, actually, I don't have my mind as an archive. I actually have it just for creating, for being creative, for generating, for like always coming up with something new. And in spirituality, they also tell me like, write the things down. If you want to get rid of a trauma, write it on a paper and burn the paper. If you want to apologize, write the letter, send the letter to the person. So I don't know, like I kept seeing these similarities. Can you elaborate a bit on this, like whether you see it as somehow similar? Because for me, it's also mind-blowing how much it converges, like it all makes sense, which means probably you are not lying either, even if I didn't apply everything what you are writing. But to me, it just simply makes sense because so many other people and let's say theories are basically saying the same, but maybe with different words and different methodology.
Yeah, good question, Natalie. And simple answer is yes, it's all the same thing. Nobody has a franchise on the truth. So if it's real and if it's true, anybody can get to it in the ways they want to get to it. It's funny, I was doing a seminar many years ago, a public seminar in Boston in the US. And I was teaching this kind of stuff. And this woman came up to me. She said, David, do you know what this is? I said, no, what is this? She said, distributed cognition. I said, do you mean write it down? She said, well, that's another way to say it.
Yeah.
And you know what she calls this? Cognitive artifact. Now, we sort of laugh, but this was at the very early stage of what became quite a field in psychology, which is the distributed cognition study of how critical it was to externalize all that, whether it's journaling, whether it's writing an apology, whether it's, doing sort of just data dumping out of your mind and burning all the papers, which I've done for years in my spiritual practices. But 35 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was getting a black belt in karate, believe me, guess what they taught us? You better be present if 4 people jump you in a dark alley, right? And guess what they taught us? Focus on your breathing, get present. This is not, I learned that 40 years ago. If you're in pain, focus on your breathing, because pain only comes out of the ego, and the ego then is remembering past how bad it was and then afraid of how bad it's going to be. If you can be totally present, like the yogis in India, they can do all that stuff that looks like they should hurt. Yeah, it's just a sensation if you get good enough at it. I'm too lazy to do all that discipline, but the whole idea is nothing new. Just like creating space in your head and the ability to be appropriately engaged. See, guys, the big key about getting things done, don't tell anybody else, but since you're smart Moldovans and, I'll share it with you. Getting things done is not as much about getting things done as it's about being appropriately engaged with your life and your work so that you're totally present with whatever you're doing. And I don't care how much mindfulness focus on your breathing you do. If you still need cat food keeps popping into your mind. Now, you could still discipline yourself to not focus on, I still need cat food. Well, why the heck don't you just write it on a Post-it, stick it on your refrigerator? So why deal with the things that are distracting you? So it's nice to be able to sort of lift up from that. If you want to clear your head, you can meditate or drink. I do both. right? So they just produce different results. They get you out of your mind in different ways. One kind of just numbs your mind, and the other would just you leave your mind. You know, if you go off into other universes.
Yeah.
But if you're in your mind and you want your mind to be clear, there's no way out other than focusing on what's got your attention, clarifying what it means, what you're going to do about it, if anything, parking the results in some trusted external brain or organization system that you know that you review and reflect on and keep current on a regular basis. Guys, if I could get it any easier than that, I would have.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
What I also liked what you said is that I think it was in one of the TED Talks that you did, is that sometimes getting the things done is actually not getting a thing done. And that's also why you need to kind of make a bit of space and clear up your
Sure.
The list of the things that you are constantly thinking about.
Well, you know, productivity has a lot of baggage as a word. Most people think productivity, oh, it means work harder, spend more time. You know, if I work more, they're going to give me more to do. Oh my God. But productivity, from my standpoint, just is producing whatever experience or outcome you're after. If you go to a party to boogie and have fun and you don't boogie and have fun, it's an unproductive party. You know, if you go on a vacation to relax and you don't relax, that's an unproductive vacation. So we just use the word productivity because there's no better word. Like producing what it is that you want to produce. Actually, everybody's already being 100% productive because you're producing exactly what you got. Right? You can't stop being productive. What we mean usually when we say I want to be more productive, for the amount of effort I'm putting in, it'd be nice if I got a bigger result. Or can I just put less effort in and get the same result? Either one of those is an increase in your productivity. So, you know, any of that's fine. But I understand. And the book, the first edition of the book particularly, was written targeted for the fast track professional, because they were the people most buried by the coming tsunami of email and all the digital changes and revolution that was going to be coming onto everybody in the late 90s. And they were the people most interested in help about that. And they had the money to pay for training and coaching about it. So the book, the first edition of the book anyway, was targeted to that fast track professional. That's why a lot of my vocabulary, and of course, you know, I had 30 years of experience in the corporate training world. And that's why, you know, a bit of that was framed that way. I knew even back then, though, that it was equally valuable for stay-at-home dads or the clergy or physicians or teachers or students or anybody. Anybody's got a busy life that wants to have a clearer head about any of it. I knew it worked, but the stuff was targeted toward that. So I understand people can have a tendency to think about all that stuff as, ooh, I'm going to have to do more. I'm going to have to do something different. And I'm already up to here. Understood. But it's funny when people finally met me or our staff or any of us, they say, God, you're nothing like what I thought you were going to be. You know, they thought I was going to be buttoned down and tight ass and anal retentive, you know, kind of guy. And it turns out I'm just the opposite of that. You know, I like to just be free and spontaneous and follow my intuitive hunches. I think that's where success really comes from. At least it does for me. That's why I came up with GTD, so I could do that.
I will again now steal something that Ilya said a bit earlier. Maybe he will come
So
with
yes,
the question.
I think we can give the floor to Ilya and maybe to have some short questions. So be able to ask David.
Yeah, sure. But what I want to say is that Ilya was actually also saying that it was from you saying that the reason why you started writing the book was because you were lazy and you wanted to kind of organize everything so you would have more space free. Sorry, Ilya, now the floor is yours.
Ilya?
Actually, was the main reason. Hello, my name is Ilya. I'm a trainer of time management. We have a picture together. It's quite, it's quite important. What I really liked on your training, I was in the room, is a specific idea which I get is from that people usually have different states of planning, executing plans, and reaction. And it's quite important for us not to mix them. Because when we start mixing, we are starting being nervous, furious, and so on. And if you want to help somebody or ask somebody, just to have to understand in each state he is and to start working with him in such a way. But in the case, for example, he is executing his plan, to find a way to replan his actions. And from this perspective, I started to focus each time on my daily work. If I have lots of time in which I have to react, so I plan less tasks when I start to planning, because if I plan all my day and my job, for example, is as an entrepreneur and I have to work with my team, in this case, I will be very angry during the day. So from this perspective, I like very much your idea. In the same way, I have just a small question. How to manage to get more time? For example, these ideas which I'm focusing now to find how to automate some actions to get the same results, or to eliminate, to delete some tasks which are not actual for us. Because in nowadays, which is quite important, I observed that people from one year to another, they have more and more tasks to do. We are, especially after this pandemic, we have more tasks to execute.
Ilya, what's your question?
My question is how to create more free time, actually, and which exactly actions or tips and tricks you are using for getting more time. Free time.
First thing to do is make sure you look at the inventory of every single thing you've committed to, and then make some good triage decisions about what you're going to not do. See, right now, let's see, most of you have some, I would say on average, 50 projects. So we've got about, 15, 20 people here. There's 1,000 projects not getting done right now. Right? How do you all feel about that?
Okay.
Right? You can only do one thing at a time anyway, guys. You just need to make sure you're comfortable with the one thing you're doing. Right? So many times I look at the whole list and go, screw it, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go sleep or go walk the dog or go do whatever I want to do aside from any of that. I just need to know what I'm not doing, so I feel okay about what I'm not doing. So you can have as much free time as, by the way, there is no more time. You can't get more time. I understand what you mean. So how could I do more of what I consider fun, recreational, free time kinds of things? I don't know. Hire somebody. Make enough money that you can hire 12 people to follow you around and delegate everything to them. I don't know. I'm kind of an end user geek. I love anything that makes things easier. I mean, the word processor and the spreadsheet changed the world. Not much since then. Relational databases are versions of spreadsheets. So, but they changed the world. They really did. You did not have to hire 25 accountants. You could do it all in Excel by yourself. And word processors changed the world because you could then have ideas and then later on figure out what to do with them. Probably none of you are old enough to remember real typewriters with erase tape. Or click, 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 click. Oh my God, I missed a letter. You had to take this tape and stick it in there and type the one you was wrong to make it. God, talk about things better be right before you even start to think about them. How crazy. And the word processor changed that world. It's like, wow, because it functions much more like your brain does. It likes to have ideas and later on figure out what to do with them. So sure, automating anything you can automate. Why not? A lot of times though, the automation is overblown. A lot of times it takes too much work to automate. Really does. And frankly, I know a number of geeky people. I mean, really nerdy types. That the geeks, they're so geeky they look normal. Right? That's a real geek. That doesn't look like one. They're out beyond hipster. They actually look like a regular person. So geeky. And a number of them are going back to paper-based systems because frankly, especially if they have ADD or ADHD issues in terms of their attention, too many clicks, they won't do it. There are too many clicks to make that software, to pull up that software and make it work. They won't do it. They're moving too fast. And frankly, paper is a lot better to have it right in front of you and like faster to do and no Wi-Fi, no batteries required. It's all right there. So there's none of those are perfect, guys. So, I just used a paper-based system for about 25 years myself. So I could go back to paper in an instant if I wanted to. So a long answer to your short question. So, just make sure you look at the inventory and, it all comes back to your horizons too. Where are you going? Which one of those things support where you're going and what you're doing, what you're about? Which ones don't? And, that's the thinking stuff you got to do, or the meditation stuff you got to do, or the reflection stuff that you have to do. And that might be at another horizon. 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing career-wise and lifestyle? And then go through your list and go, is that supporting that? Is that supporting that? Is that supporting that? And just at least use the someday maybe list, right? Very few people really, really use a someday maybe list, and it's a sleeper list. It's a great list to have. Most people don't use it because they think, well, that's just a throwaway. No, it's not. And then what happens is you overblow your action list and your project list because you don't want to stick them on someday maybe. So then you feel overblown about everything on your list. You go, God, I don't have time to do anything. Oh, you have time to do anything, not everything, just anything. Just make sure that the anything you pick you want to work on is the thing you want to work on. I know that sounds like a simplistic answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah, David, thank you very much. About writing on paper, I noticed that even in IT companies, people use sticky notes when they use Scrum methodology. So people really like nowadays to use papers.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. We have a question from Marina Vimar. Marina, would you like to ask David your question? Marina Vimar. Marina, are you here? Well, actually, her question is about...
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Marina, go ahead.
I wrote them all in the chat, so I figured you guys would just ask them. Hi, happy birthday. I'm Marina. I guess the first question actually has a lot to do with my second question as well. I don't know how to turn this on. Sorry about the noise. It all has to do with what Natalie asked in the beginning about manifestation and spirituality and all of whatever that genre is called. I'm not going to pretend I know what that genre is called, but like the mindful development. Do you regularly meditate?
Do I?
Yes.
For 50
Do you
years,
at all?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a big part of that book that was just about decluttering. Do you think that you, my question is that somehow related to that? Because they teach about decluttering and all of those types of courses.
Well, I think we're all on the planet to do two things: complete and create. You're here to finish stuff that you've put into motion, whether that was 25 million lifetimes ago or 20 minutes ago. You're going to eat it if you've invested in it, have your attention in it, have any commitments about it until it's completed or until you let it go. Right. So a whole lot about completion. And then once you get clear, because completing things gives you clarity of space and it gives you energy, it releases energy you've got tied up in those incomplete open loops. It's like how you feel when you clean a drawer, how you feel when you vacuum your room, how you feel when you clean the dishes, how you feel when you clean your car. The car drives better, by the way, when it's clean. I don't know if you know that.
I actually don't know that because I don't do that.
Yeah, well, I haven't had a car in 7 years since I've been in Amsterdam, but when my bike is clean, my bike rides smoother and better. Anyway, so yeah, so it's all about once you're then completing, you can't also stop creating. So once you get room to create, which is what a lot of what GTD produces, then you have the accountability to be focusing yourself toward the things that are meaningful to you and that aren't producing more karma or more incompletions than they deserve, right? So in a way, GTD is not spiritual unless you consider everything as spiritual. And I use spiritual with a small s. It's called stuff you can't see that's still impacting everything we can see. And so that's why I can't stop teaching it, because what else would I want to teach somebody in terms of what I've learned over all my 75 years, other than, hey guys, what's got your attention? Why? It's something that's incomplete. It's something that you haven't clarified yet. And it's something that's taking up energy that you're not able to use toward creating the kind of things that will be more meaningful to you. I don't know, maybe that's a wrong approach, but that's all I could do.
Are you
Sorry?
Are you working on anything right now? Are you working on anything right now?
Yeah, well, I got a lot of projects going on. Learning Dutch, that's Alzheimer prevention, right? So, you know, so
I
my
meant,
wife and I intend to immigrate this year. So, but we got to pass the language exam. So that's one. We just bought an apartment in Amsterdam, so that's another big project, you know, doing that. And then I've got quite a number of projects that I'm supporting in terms of our work. You know, we're now represented in 90 countries with certified trainers and coaches that we have certified ourselves. It's not a mail order certification. This is rigorous stuff. And it's a great, great network of people that have really been attracted to doing this work and teaching this work. So supporting all of them is a lot of what my energy and Catherine, my wife, is what we've been doing a lot, you know, over the last 3 or 4 years, is supporting that global network. You know, managing the brand, managing legal stuff, managing the support materials, managing going virtual and building virtual tools for both coaching and training. You know, that's a lot to do. And you know, I've got another book sort of in the works with a co-author about GTD and organizational culture, because that's kind of been a missing piece out there. Most people, when they get GTD, go, God, everybody around me ought to get this. How do I get it into my company? Good question. How do I get it into my family? Good question. How do I get my spouse to do this? Forget it. You know? So, but talking about what happens when people get it. So you can't teach an organization to read, but you better have people who read to make sure the organization run. So you can't teach an organization GTD, though the principles of GTD are just good business principles, outcome and action. What are we trying to produce? How do we allocate or reallocate our resources to make it happen? And how do we make sure we've got appropriate roles and accountabilities? And how do we keep track of all that stuff? Come on, that's just GTD. You know, so there is ongoing projects. On retirement, there's nothing. I couldn't retire until I just can't do anything, because I couldn't stop doing whatever it is I'm doing. Somebody asked, like you guys did, I couldn't stop telling you. See, my purpose is that we create a world where people perceive projects or problems as projects, and we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Who is the co-author?
Thank you. But let's give the floor to our participants because
Oh, okay. I apologize.
yeah, we can have another round if David will be available. But give the floor to our people as well. Thank you very much.
I have no time constraint, by the way, so I'm happy to go as long as you guys want to go.
You're very generous with us, David. Thank you. We have a question from Alexander Konstantinov. Alexander.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, David. My name is Alexander. I'm sales trainer. I'm 25 years old. My question is, if you were 25 years old, on what will you focus on the most?
Again, if I was 25?
Yeah.
I can't imagine, you know, choosing any life other than the one I've lived. So, you know, I would do exactly what I was doing then. You know, I was young and stupid, but thank goodness, you know, if I'd been any smarter, I wouldn't have taken some of the risks that I took. So, you know, thank goodness I got, you know, come on, I can't.
But what you have done on 25 years, on your 25?
When I was 25, let's see, I was born in 1945. So when I was 25 is what, 1970? Yeah, I was getting my black belt in karate then. I dropped out of graduate school in 1968, 69. I was studying American intellectual cultural history in graduate school in Berkeley in 1968. And if any of you have history books, look up Berkeley in 1968. It was kind of a heady time to be there. But I dropped out because I got tired of studying people who were enlightened, and I wanted my own. So I went chasing my own enlightenment, God, truth, and the universe. So then I hopped off and got into my own personal exploration, which included the martial arts, included, you know, I'd read, you know, Zen writings and so forth, even in high school. And I loved that whole sort of aesthetic, essentially, of the Zen. And when a friend offered to teach me karate, I did it not because I wanted to hit anybody, but because I wanted to understand the martial art of that are associated with the Zen concepts. Turns out that I really like hitting people once I learned it, but you know, that was just a discovery. Not people. I loved hitting heavy bags, but
Sure.
anyway, so that was what I was doing when I was 25, and also then exploring lots of personal experiences that I didn't know how to make sense out of, that I would look back on and say they were tastes of the spirit in the spiritual worlds. And I had some of those experiences, and that was not just intriguing, it was, I wouldn't say by then it was transformational, but it was later on, you know, for me to really get in and explore what that was about with, you know, with coaches and teachers that knew more about that than I did. So that was where I was then.
But my question is, if you have to choose to invest your full attention on or your full focus on something one, what it will be?
A way to
on 25.
I would just some way to make a living. Also, when I was 25, I was driving a taxi to pay the rent while I was getting a black belt in karate. So that was one of my 35 jobs I had by the time I was 35. So I just had a lot of jobs, and I was just doing a lot of that stuff. What would I do? I would say, well, what's the thing that most attracts me right now that I want to learn about and experience? And what are the options looking around? And I just pick what's the best option I could see and start moving toward it. I've almost never really created or produced, and to some degree I have, but you know, we many times we don't actually get to any goals we set. We set the goal so it creates a direction and an impetus for us to start moving towards something that we think is cool. But you get halfway toward that goal, you look around and go, oh damn, that's even better than that. And so, you know, I turn left, but I didn't see that better thing until I started moving on the first goal. So I never got the first goal, but the first goal got me to the place that I could see what I really wanted to do. So that was a big lesson I learned, you know, in my 20s, was to stop waiting for the perfect job, the perfect thing to do. So you just asked me for what's the perfect thing to do. I'd say, look around you. Another way to think about this is, what's the experience you want from your perfect thing? What's the experience you want? Fun, freedom, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of service, a sense of self-development? I don't know. You tell me. And then you say, okay, given that's what I want that to produce for me, say, how could you start producing that for yourself right now with the options that are available to you? And then go pick one. Don't wait for the perfect one. I waited too long for the perfect job and wound up doing a bunch of stuff that wasn't very interesting at all just to pay the rent, as opposed to, okay, here's a direction I think I want to go in. You know, when somebody asked me a good question, they said, what's your fantasy? When I told them what my fantasy was, they said, and a lot of that was, my fantasy was to be president of the United States. So, what would that give you? And I thought about it. I said, well, it would give me people's attention so I could be able to reach them with stuff I found that would be valuable to them. He said, well, great, David, what could you do right now that could get people's attention, that you could produce value for them? And I went, aha, I forget exactly what it was, but I got off my butt and just started moving on stuff that was moving more in that direction. So I would say, Alexander, what's your fantasy? Right. And then decide what we think the fantasy would produce for you. And then look around and say, okay, how could I start producing that for myself right now? Or what could I do that would move me in that direction? Yeah, good question.
Thank you, David. The next question would come from Nicoleta Kopacz, because she sent me 2 questions before our meeting, and I give her the opportunity to ask you.
Thank you, Vasily. Hi, David. Hi, everyone. I wanted to say that I think this book is especially relevant nowadays, because with all the COVID situation that's going on, I think our mind is especially clouded with a lot of emotions and feelings. So I think it feels, at least for me, it feels like it's busier than usual in some kind of way. So I'm very happy, you know, that we had this event on the book club. And then, you know, I was, because I've heard about the book sometime before, but, you know, I actually never took the time to actually start reading the book. So because of this event, I actually started reading the book, and I feel like it's exactly what I need right now. But my question is more pragmatical one. So how much time on average does it take someone to actually integrate the workflow that you are describing in their life and in their like work of, in their way of working?
To implement it or to make it permanently a habit?
Okay, make it a permanent habit.
2 years.
2 years.
Generally.
Okay,
That's if you're really good and you're really focused. See, the habit of just writing things down as they occur to you is a huge habit for most adults to change. Your brain is so seductive, it's going to convince you that when you're thinking of it, it's so obvious, you're sure you'll never forget it, and you'll remember it at the right time. And your brain is absolutely a fabulous servant, and it absolutely sucks as a manager, right? It's a great servant, but it's a terrible master. And a lot of people are letting their mind master them. See, once you have that idea, you go, I won't forget that. Then of course, 2 minutes later, you're thinking of the next idea that you're sure you'll never forget, but you forgot the first one. So you're not born doing these behaviors. You didn't hop out of your mom and go, gee, mom, what exactly we're trying to accomplish? And what's the next action? Is that yours or mine? No, this is learned behavior. So that learned behavior, if it's not habitual for you, is how long does it take you to change that habit? And I'll tell you, now, some people get it right away because it's so close to what they were already doing. They go, oh, that was just the final 2 pieces I needed, and they got it and they hit the road running. That's rare, but it's possible, and I bet them that did that. So I don't want to limit anybody. You ask, what's the average time it takes for somebody to make this habitual? See, if I made a commitment with any of you folks, you know, that I couldn't finish the moment I'm thinking of it, I'm pulling up this right here, which sits right next to me, and capturing that, you know. And if I'm not there, if I was in my kitchen or somewhere else, I'm pulling this out of my pocket and I'm capturing it, right? I mean, I would feel uncomfortable not doing that. That's what a habit is, by the way, because you're uncomfortable if you don't do it. But I clean up my in basket to 0, and I do weekly reviews for the same reason that I take showers and brush my teeth. If I didn't, it feels too bad. The biggest issue most people have is you're willing to feel bad. You're willing to experience what I refer to now as ambient anxiety. It's not overwhelm. Come on, you handle overwhelm. It's ambient. It's that weird, strange little feeling that I maybe should be, could be, ought to be, but what else could, I don't know if I'm not exactly sure exactly what I should be doing. And that's the ambient anxiety. If you're willing to tolerate that, you won't change. It's your willingness to tolerate it, your addiction to that stress. It's not like you need to go shoot up stress. It's just that you're willing to tolerate that. Now, you know, I'm not taking showers 24 hours a day, but every day or two for sure, you know. So, you know, I'm not doing a weekly review every day. There was a time in my life where I had to, because my life was moving so fast and changing so many things. I had to step back and review regularly, not just once a week, in order to stay focused on the right stuff. So it's just whatever you need to do to stay clear. But clear, and your need to be in that clarity is going to be the prime driver of how long it takes you to do this.
Okay, so the key is to be consistent and not give up, especially at the beginning when it feels unnatural.
Yes, indeed. No, you got it. Perfect. Get around people who are doing it, so you feel embarrassed if you don't do it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicoletta.
Thank you, David.
The next question is from Elena Ganchukova. Elena, are you here?
Yeah, hello to everyone. David, my question actually I have several, but the first one is about soft skills. Lastly, we often speak about soft skills, and what soft skills do you think that we should focus on developing in the short future?
You said self-guilt?
No. Self-development, I said. Soft skills, I said.
Oh, soft skills, yeah. So what's the question again? Sorry.
So my question was, what soft skill development should we focus on in the short future?
GTD. The skill is, how do I get a clear head and get present? How do I get anything that's distracting me or pulling on my attention off my mind? That's a skill. You weren't born doing it. It's not hard to do. The behaviors are not hard. But again, that would be the skill. It's like, what do you need? If I were to walk in as a coach to you, Elena, right now, I'd say, gee, Elena, what's got your attention? When you get off this call, or even while you're on the call, where has your mind gone? I bet most of you, by the way, have had your mind go somewhere has absolutely nothing to do with what we've been talking about. So that's the only place I would start. I don't have to go far. I say, hey, why does it have your attention? It does, because there are decisions about it you haven't made, or you haven't parked the results in some sort of trusted place that you are the right person to see at the right time. And so I just figured out how you get clear. You have to decide whether you want to do that or not. So what personal skill do you need? Well, what outcome are you after? That's going to tell you what personal skill. If you want to be a jazz flutist, you better get a good flute, start practicing.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, what books are you reading right now?
I'm not reading any books right now. I'm trying to, this is the book I'm
right
reading. It's called Welcome in Netherlands, right? This is my manual for what I'm going to need to pass a test about. So I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time to read. I have read some really good books lately. One of them, by the way, a really great book I would suggest for anybody. It's called The Antidote by Oliver Burkeman, a Brit. It's a very funny book, but it's wonderful. And by the way, his subtitle is Happiness for People Who Can't Stand Positive Thinking.
It sounds like the perfect book for me. So thank you very much.
It's great. It's great because he talks a lot about the Stoics. Most people don't understand the Stoicism and what the Stoics were about. They think it was just purely being aesthetic and having some, just such a real simplified life. It was really more about the ability to be totally accepting of whatever is up. See, in my own spiritual practices, acceptance is the first law of spirit. If you can't accept whatever is going on, however you're perceiving it, you're going to be stuck with it. What you resist, you're stuck with. So to build, doesn't mean you have to like what's going on, but you better accept it. You better realize, here's how much money I have. Here's how I'm feeling. Here's what's going on with, whatever your current reality is. And to some degree, that's a lot of what GTD is about. It's a lot of why people resist it to some degree. They say, you mean I'm going to have to track everything I've committed to? Oh my God. Well, don't get mad at me for your list. That's not my list.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Elena. I'd like to give the floor to Anna Ляху because she sent us some questions and taking the question. Anna, are you here?
Yes, hello. I would like to ask about the relationship between self-doubt and getting things done. Do you see some connections between these two?
Well, I'm sure there is. I'd have to think about it for a minute. Self-doubt. Well, none of us know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. That's either good or bad news, right? So if you doubt that what you're doing is the right thing, or you have some sense of concern about what you're doing, GTD will help with that because it's going to make you a lot more confident about what you do. I'm not a motivational speaker, guys. I sleep as long as I can. I'm the laziest guy you ever met. I am not into working any harder. I even hate the word discipline. It's more direction. I would substitute direction for discipline. I just need to direct myself about how to think about this email. I just need to direct myself about this thing that has my attention. So if you start to implement GTD, it will give you a lot more confidence and eliminate a lot of your self-doubt. See, a lot of the self-doubt just comes from that ambient anxiety. I'm not sure that I'm doing what I ought to be doing. If you were totally self-confident, you'd say, right now, this is exactly what I need to be doing. I may have made a bad call, but I'll find out, and then I can course correct once I get better data. And so the ability to be in the driver's seat of your life instead of being in the victim complaining mode. See, self-doubt really comes out of that kind of victim complaining reactive mode to life. But GTD puts you back in the driver's seat. See, I don't need to show up and say, gee, you need to have a lot more confidence. I just show up and say, why the hell is this on your desk? What are you gonna do with this? What agreement, you know, it's yelling at you or whispering to you or doing something at you. Why is it there? Well, great, what are you gonna do about it? Oh, you know, I guess what I need to do is call my sister. Okay, great. You're gonna put a reminder of that somewhere you know you'll see? Oh yeah, I got a list of calls to do. Great. How do you feel? I'm in charge of my world now. Yeah, no kidding. So I don't have to address much more of anything other than get you back in the driver's seat about the stuff that you're being victimed about. And you're being victimized by anything that has your attention if it keeps occurring to you more than once. See, if I need cat food pops into my head more than once, I'm inappropriately engaged with my cat. So you're not appropriately engaged with anything as things keep recurring in your mind, unless you just like thinking about that, unless you like having those thoughts. Nothing wrong with just grazing in your mind. I do that all day long. Oh, that's cool. Wow, that's pretty. Hey, look at the sky. It's blue sky out there. How nice. You know, I'm not writing any of that down. Those are not agreements I'm making with myself. If I look at the sky and go, oh, that's really cool. And it may not be, you know, I probably better do something with my wife and my dog while the sun is out. Now I got a commitment. Now I'm either getting in my driver's seat about that, or I'm feeling, oh God, I should, but I'm not. I don't know. See, you don't ever get rid of stress. If you never had any stress, you'd never grow, you never do anything, you'd never be inspired to do anything else. It's just negative stress and positive stress. So positive stress says, I want to be out of the room, and I'm getting up and starting to move out of the room so I can match my picture of being out of the room. That's the stress that's creative. You have some vision of something that's not true, that automatically creates a cognitive dissonance. And then what you do is go start moving toward that vision in order to relieve that tension. That's positive. You don't want to get rid of that. That's how you grow. You always want challenge. You always want opportunities to grow and expand and express yourself. The negative stress says, I want to be out of the room. Yeah, but I also want to sit here. Oh, damn, I can't be out of the room and sit here too. Oh shit. You know, now you're in ulcer territory because you've got self-conflict. So I think the self-doubt, as I think about it, is probably more like self-conflict than self-doubt.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, David. Thank you. We have a question from Dennis. Dennis, are you here? Can you ask your question? I'm not sure if he's able to ask his question. Dennis? Well, he has a very long question. I'll try to read it, David, for you. When it comes to the GDT approach, I have always pictured it as a mix between reactionary and proactive approaches, measures. It will be interesting to know your opinion. What will be the perfect mixed proportion that one should apply in order to best use the GDT system? For instance, the inbox approach seems very reactionary, and if too much attention is being paid to that aspect of the system, one risks being bogged down in other people's work, while the project and some day maybe seems to be more of a proactive aspect of the system. In your opinion, what will be the best balance of these two approaches?
I don't know. Well, let me ask you this. Do you only take out some of your garbage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You just let you rummage through your garbage. Say, that's the garbage I want to take out today. And I'm going to leave the rest in there because it's not that important garbage, but it's still garbage, but it's still, I'm going to leave it in there. Mm-hmm. No. And are you taking garbage out every minute of the day? No. So I'm emptying my in basket, not every minute of the day. I'm just emptying when I'm not doing anything else because there's a surprise coming toward me I can't see. And when that hits, I want as little backlog of unprocessed, unclarified, unorganized stuff in my life. By the way, when you get hit with surprise, your degree of backlog is the degree to which that's going to piss you off. Even good stuff, because you can't evaluate against what the current inventory is because you haven't got a current inventory. So I'm just emptying stuff regularly whenever I do it, whenever I feel like doing it. I just do stuff when I feel like doing it. I have no, rules are made when brains run out, guys. So I don't make any rules about any of that. I plan as little as I get by with, but as much as I need to get it off my mind. It's that simple. What do I need to do to get all this off my mind? So you go ahead and let stuff mount up. Just don't empty your garbage for 2 weeks. Don't empty your in basket for 2 weeks. At some point, when are you going to feel uncomfortable that you haven't looked at that or haven't dealt with it? I don't know. It's up to you. I don't take a shower 24 hours a day, but I do once a day. So same thing. You just get into a rhythm with all this stuff. Just maintain. By the way, it takes less energy to maintain your inbox at 0 than it does to maintain a backlog of 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
Takes less energy. You have to keep rethinking, relooking, reorganizing, avoiding. Like, that's no fun.
Can we say DDT is a kind of lifestyle? Can it be a lifestyle?
Sure. Well, it's a life and work. It's a life and work. It's a set of behaviors that allow you to be as clear as you can be and present with as many things as you need to be present about, whatever you want to call that.
I see.
So is being married a lifestyle. So is living in an apartment a lifestyle. So is living where you're living a lifestyle. So is doing whatever kind of job or work that you do as part of your lifestyle. So GTD is about a process. It's not about the content. I don't care what your content is. I just know how to walk you through a process so you get clear about your own content and feel comfortable about it. So it doesn't tell you what you should be thinking about. Now, I've spent many years, in my early years, particularly literally as a consultant, a management consultant, organizational consultant. So I spent, I've done quite a bit of work where I could say, okay, look, here's the best practice, guys. If you want to make sure that X, Y, and Z happens, I have my own, experience with that, and here's a model that you might use. Right? But even then, it was more of a process consulting, not so much content. I was leading a meeting at McDonnell Douglas, the pre-Boeing days in aerospace, one of my earliest, industries that I did a lot of work in the 1980s. And they asked me to come in and facilitate a project meeting with one of their teams. And I walked in, and these guys are talking, and I said, okay, great, let me grab that idea, and I went up and started mind mapping that, and I said, no, how do you spell that? And I put that up there, and they put that up there, and I said, well, what does that mean, and what are you going to do about that? And so, and which one should we, and whatever. And they walked and said, God, David, you're brilliant. I had no idea what they were talking about. I still never had any idea what they were talking about. I didn't understand. This was like so high level technology, aerospace technology stuff. Aerophysics. It's like, I had no idea. I just knew how to walk them through the right questions. So that's the process consulting game. So I don't know. I think I think I may have gone afield of the question that you asked, there. But is it? So yes, can you spend too much? You can spend too much time on anything. A lot of people use organization as a way to avoid their life. Hi, let me tell yourself to write the great Moldovan novel and watch how much you're going to go clean your toilet. You're going to go clean that. You're going to go clean you're going to go do that and that, because I need to get more organized. I need to get more ready. Right. So, you can use any of this stuff to avoid the stuff that you want to do, for sure.
Like we have lows in physics, we have lows in spiritual world, but also GT is kind of low of clarity, maybe.
Well, I don't have to call them laws, but yeah, it's the principle of getting clear. And by the way, if you have nothing on your mind, you're already doing it. I just defy people to really know whether there's nothing on their mind or not, because once you give appropriate attention to actually what has your attention, you'll then uncover what really has your attention. And once you handle that, then you'll start to uncover what really has your attention. And then once you then engage with that appropriately, you'll find out what really has your attention. So it's a big onion to unpeel.
And in your book, you said that life consists of cycles. Things go better and then get worse.
Well, one way to say that is the better you get, the better you better get. Mm-hmm. Just because the better you get, the more confidence you're going to have you could do anything. And then you start overcommitting. That's a typical syndrome, by the way. I don't know if any of you are there yet, And I've seen people who are big GTD fans and advocates and implementers that usually in somewhere between 2 months and 2 years, they get so excited, they start to take on all kinds of projects. Oh, I could do that. I could do, let me throw that in my inbox. I'll get that done. And they get so excited that they have this implementation methodology under their belt. And then they wind up at some point burning out or getting close to it. You're going, wait a minute. I don't know this is what GTD is really about. It's not. What they're doing is missing some higher horizon of their own commitment about lifestyle and balance, right? But it takes a while. It takes a while to get there. But then they start to go back and start to use the someday maybe list and start to do the triage. Go, wait a minute, I can't do all this stuff. You know, let me pull it back to something, a reasonable, you know, quantity or quota, you know, what I'm willing to commit to.
Thank you, David, for this explanation. I just want to remind our participants, so if they want to ask you a question, they can raise their hands and write down their question. But I still have a question to you, David. What do you think about people who are better at improvising rather than planning? Do you have an idea about this?
Oh, improvise as much as you want. Well, you're free to improvise. Everybody's improvising all the time. Plans are just some structure that you set up, you know, to then allow you to improvise. Right. So if you like if what you're saying is being spontaneous, I couldn't agree more. What do you need to do so that you can be as spontaneous and improvise as much as you want to? So you're most creative when you have the freedom to make a mess. The problem is if you're in one, you can't make one. So that's why the French chefs say mise en place. Before they ring the bell for the dinner, you know, prep, everything is better be in its place. Everything. Now, if you're a college boy, you know, your kitchen, you just need to be able to find the salt, right? But if you're a French chef, you know, you better have everything. Why? Because they're going to be highly creative and innovative, and they're going to need to be on spontaneous, and they're going to need to improvise, right? But if you're in a messy kitchen, you can't do that.
Okay.
Right? So clean up so that you can get crazy. Yeah. I think it was Flaubert, the great French novelist, who really broke a lot of ground in terms of fiction writing. And he said something like, I won't do it justice. I can't remember exactly the quote. It's be translated from French anyway, but it was, be steady and well ordered in your life so that you could be crazy and spontaneous in your work.
Interesting. Thank you, David. One thing that I noticed is you said that multitasking is not a very good thing. And I find this very similar to Scrum framework. It's an IT methodology that I think you know. So why people like to multitask and they're not efficient? Because...
Well, usually see, if you ever saw a martial artist fight 4 people at once, do they fight 4 people at once? One at a time, just real quick refocusing, refocus. They're just not bringing one thing into the next thing. So as long as you don't bring one thing into the next thing, you can shift your focus rapidly. Come on, watch a good chef. Are they multitasking? Look how many things they've got going on in the kitchen at once. So sure, they're multitasking. If what you mean by that is there are a lot of ongoing activities that are part of some end result commitment that people are engaged in. But what are they doing? They're moving from that one to that one to that one to that one, right? So and by the way, multitasking, you actually can't multitask in terms of putting your conscious attention on more than one thing at a time. Real multitasking happens when you drive home and wonder who drove. Right? Somebody was driving, but your mind was somewhere else, right? Who did that? You're multitasking right now. You're breathing, you're pumping your blood. There's all kinds of things going on. They're just habitual. So they're on cruise control. So anything that's habit, you know, you can be doing habitual stuff in the kitchen or cleaning whatever and having your mind go lots of different places. Why? Because it's just that, why not? You know, so it's easy to think about stuff, you know, like while you're jogging or while you're doing other things, because they're kind of on automatic. But you can't focus on your run or your jogging and still think about something else at the same time. You can't do that. But you can shift your focus rapidly. The problem is that people are doing something And then they start thinking about something else, but they then don't leave appropriate placeholders for what they were just thinking about. And so their brain is still spinning on that because it doesn't trust that it left a placeholder in an appropriate place. So if you came in right now physically to me and said, David, by the way, there's a cool thing we need to do, whatever, and I'm still working on something else, I'm going to take what I'm working on right now and throw it into my in tray and then go handle that. Why? Because I can now be present with that, knowing I've got this placeholder in my in tray that when I come back and go, oh, that's right, let me pick up where I left off. So as long as you have the ability to pick up where you left off on anything, you can be very fast and rapidly refocus and be very clear. Look at the martial artists.
Thank you, David, for explanation. Next question is from Natalie. Natalie, please.
If I may, I would go with the second question. One of the points in the book that for me was another aha moment, because I kind of thought I read many things. So it happens often that some ideas are being repeated. You've been saying yourself that you haven't really created everything completely from scratch, but something completely new for me was to agree with the thing that there might be or should be a someday or maybe list. For me, it was always like, there are just things I put on my to-do list and I have to do it today, and they are prioritized somehow. But I didn't even imagine that I can put something completely aside and recognize it to myself, that this is actually okay if I'll do it either today or in 5 months or I don't know when, but it's just a nice thing to do at some point. And what it got me thinking is, how the heck did you actually come up with the book, with everything in the book? Because many of the things are so specific and so simple in a way, but there are so many of them. It's like it's a whole structure. I can imagine somebody working on this their whole life. So do you remember actually how had the process of writing, the process of organizing the book? Also, why I'm asking this is because the previous book club meeting we had with an author of a novel, she's from Moldova, and when we asked her something about the process of writing, she said, I have no idea. I don't remember. It was just sometimes, it was only 3 years ago, but she said, I don't remember how this happened. Do you remember how it happened for you? It was 20 years ago, but how did you structure everything? How did you come up with the rules and put them down and not forget anything important from it?
Well, some of the basics I learned from other sources. I had a great mentor that taught me the mind sweep and next action thinking. So I didn't make those up, he did. He actually discovered those as a way to, because he worked a lot with executives trying to do organizational change, and he found it difficult if their head was clogged up and constipated with all that stuff. So he got them to unload everything out of their head and make next action decisions about those. So Dean made that up. I acknowledge Dean in the book. So I got those two key concepts, from Dean. Even earlier than that, in my own self, personal growth stuff that I was involved in, intensive self-development trainings and so forth. I was a facilitator of those. And a lot of that had to do with agreements, the price you pay when you break agreements, and the good news if you keep agreements. Mm-hmm. And so understanding that agreements and how we manage agreements, you either keep them, don't make them, or renegotiate them. And so that became a key element of what the context of GTD sort of grew into. But I did not, Natalia, I did not wake up one morning with all of this big epiphany. As I say, it's a long string, about 10 years of epiphanettes, tiny little ahas, and begin to then put all that together. But because I was being asked in to coach people and also asked to design training around this, that forced me to sort of formulate a more structured methodology, structured expression of the methodology anyway, so that I could transfer that to other people, and that they could catch the model anyway. So the model probably developed over a period of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I was just doing my work. I was starting to bring some of this stuff into my own consulting practice with my small businesses and people that I was consulting to. We didn't call it coaching back then, but it was pretty much that, coaching with the CEOs or the entrepreneurs. And I started implementing some of these things I was learning for myself just to keep me clear, and it worked exactly the same way for them. And then some guy showed up from the big corporate world and said, gee, David, we need that in our whole corporation. And he was the new head of human resources for Lockheed. And he said, can you design a training program around what you've come up with here that we could then reach a lot of people with this methodology? So I spent a couple of months designing a personal productivity training around this methodology. And that forced me to think through some of these things and what are the key components to it and what are the sequence of them and how do they kind of fit together. And then, we did a pilot program for 1,000 executives and managers, at Lockheed in 1983, 84, and it worked. It hit a nerve. Wow, that's cool. So a lot of my consulting turned into coaching for senior people in these companies that were bringing me in to do the training. And that really refined my process a lot by sitting down with people and saying, okay, what really works here? And let's take this and try this out. So it got honed and refined. Some of the basic building blocks of it were kind of chunked together early on, back in the 1980s. And then by the 1990s, it had become pretty much refined, given all the training and coaching that I was doing by that time. So that's how it worked. I still learn something every time I do any of this stuff. It's because, hey, come on, how good can you get at cooking spaghetti? How good can you get at being a parent? How good can you get at playing the flute? How good can you get at anything that requires that? And so there's no end. GTD is not something you finish. You don't finish playing the flute if you like to play the flute. There's always something next thing. There's a new nuance to this. There's another subtlety to this. So there's a lot of subtleties that keep occurring to me, about this stuff as I work with it. Even just sharing with you guys, I see something a new way. I never said that before. Wow, I should write that down. That was a cool way to say that.
Have you ever had that thing that somebody quotes you and you're like, oh my God, that's so smart?
Sometimes I read my own book and go, God, that's really good. I ought to do that. Oh, I wrote that. Oh, okay.
Nice.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, David. We have a question from Mihaela Mirza. Mihaela, would you like to step in?
By the way, Vasily, let's go about 10 more minutes just to give everybody a sense of our timing here.
Okay. So I think Mihaela is the last question. Yeah.
So David, according Wiki, so 2 weeks ago we just turned the third quarter of a century. Is it right? So a late happy birthday from us. And again, according to Wiki, before the age 35, you had about 35 professions. Is it true?
35 jobs. I wouldn't call them professions.
Yeah.
Some of them were one-night jobs, that I spent cooking hamburgers on the street, at midnight and for somebody. And so I just, I think I'd had too much to drink on a plane ride sometime, and I was 35, and I said, let me just make a list of everything I ever did for money. And it turned out to be 35. I said, well, that's why I always remember, because it's like, well, 35 things by then. And I was by age 35. Started when I was age 5 as a magician in Palestine, Texas, doing magic tricks on the sidewalk for 5 cents. That was my first job.
Anyway, it's very impressive. And I looked through the list. As you said, I saw you've been a magician, a landscaper, a gas station manager, restaurant cook. It's something very, it's a big diversity. And my question was actually, how could you learn all of these skills so fast? Do you have a recommendation how to embrace so fast a new profession? Because your jobs were very different.
I was a beginner at all of them, so I wasn't an expert in any.
Even as a manager, as a gas station manager.
Yeah, no, I came in. Well, I started just pumping gas, so that's how I started. But then I learned. But come on, to be a manager, you don't need to know a whole lot about how to organize what you've learned about what's there. There weren't a lot of careers that I had to learn a whole lot ahead of time in order to do that. And quite frankly, folks, I've never had any formal traditional education in business psychology or time management. Oh. None. This is all what we call street smarts. I just threw myself out there and learned, by experience. That was it.
Sorry. Go on. So I won't take more time, just the last questions. I've noticed in your book, you have a lot of famous phrases. And I was asking myself, how did you get them there? Did you got them? Yeah. So was it every time, like when you were writing something, remembering that phrase and thinking, oh, it's good to be here? or it were some moments when you were like, here we need a famous phrase, let me look for one? Because if you had all of them in your head, probably you had read a lot. And
no, I've maintained a database for 25 years of quotes.
wow.
So I just say, okay, give me a quote about fun, or a quote about this and a quote about that. So I just wound up, having a nice, piece of software that I just used to collect all of those, over the years. But then it turned out to be quite valuable when I sat down to write the book. But I started doing that way before 2001.
Thank you, David. David, I think it's time yet to finish our meeting, because we're short on time. Your final thoughts, maybe, or if you have any questions to us.
Sorry, nothing on my mind. Other than, hey, I appreciate the engagement. I appreciate you guys doing what you're doing. Good work. And these days, especially being in the, now we're in the virtual world of the COVID world, that you're taking advantage of that. And this has been fun. Good questions. You look like great folks. All quite attractive. My goodness, Moldova did that. I mean, my Moldova lady was Ludmila. Wrote on you, she was so attractive. What a great lady. So Moldova had wonderfully attractive people. So you're all are holding the flag for that. Good for you. Anyway, so it's been fun, and happy to do this again at some point. If any of you are reading this, maybe Vasily, I don't know, 6 months from now or something like that, you want to revisit and see whether any of this stuck.
That would be great.
Sure, happy to.
Because we're going to implement GDT.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for coming. It was a big pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Good luck on your exam.